Welcome to the WoW, Wings of Wisdom podcast, where curiosity meets inspiration, brought to you by the Writing and Communication Center at Ashland University. In each episode, we invite a remarkable guest from our university community to share their journey, explore the power of communication, and unveil the strategies they use to guide students toward growth and success. Whether you're a learner, an educator, or someone captivated by the stories of triumph and discovery in the academic world, you're in the right place. So settle in, open your mind, and prepare to soar on the wings of wisdom.
Hello, welcome to Wings of Wisdom podcast. Wow. My name is Mohsin Van Said, and I direct the Writing Communication Center. Zach, what's your name?
My name is Zach Van Faro, as Mohsin mentioned. I'm a religion and psychology major, part of the Writing Center, one of the coaches here. So today on WoW, we're thrilled to welcome Dr. Metzger, part of the psychology department. He has left an indelible mark on Ashland University and the broader academic community. He is a scholar of the prolific measure and a compassionate educator. I would know, I took one of his classes. He's been the beacon of both knowledge and guidance to students and faculty alike, specializing in cognitive processes like memory function and attention. His efforts extend beyond the classroom into very impactful research, publications, and contributions to the athletic community and residential communities of Ashland. And in this episode, we'll explore his personal experiences that have shaped his career. So welcome, Dr. Metzger.
Well, I'm not sure I can live up to that introduction, but I'll do my best today. Thank you.
We actually worked so hard to condense everything that you've accomplished in all of years at AU in one single paragraph. So,
well, I'm not sure if that speaks to that or just the fact that I'm a survivor here. So,
well, let's start from there. Maybe like what brought you to AU, and what can you tell us about your experience so far?
yeah. So, I was curious. I was right before I came on with you. I pulled up the roster of faculty to see kind of how many people have been here longer than I have. So this year this fall started my 21st year at AU. I actually taught for about 6 or 7 years at one of the satellite campuses at Penn State before I came here. And as I was going through the roster, I think there's about 30 people that have been here longer than I. So I'm not sure how many faculty we have. I guess we're probably somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe about 150 full-time faculty. So, I got about I'm in almost the top 30 in terms of number of years served. So I've been here quite a while. And it's kind of funny. I can tell my students about this a lot where, you think you've got plans for, what your life is going to look like and where you're going to be and all that kind of stuff. And you can have as good of plans laid out as you can make, but that doesn't always necessarily correlate with what God's got planned for you. So I was actually teaching at Penn State. This would have been fall or spring of 2002. And it just so happened that I was trying to track down a buddy of mine that I had been to grad school with. And for some reason, I thought that he was at Ashland. So I get into work one day and I'm trying to track this guy down. And I pull up the Ashland website and I get to the psych department. And I was convinced he was there. And it turned out that he wasn't. And he wasn't listed on the faculty. But as I was sitting there looking at the list of faculty, I see that they had this job ad posted. And I start reading through it. And, a lot of times in academia, what a job ad, when they're searching for a faculty member, they'll list all of the different requirements, of course, that they want this person to do. And one of the important things that they always list are the courses that they want that new person to teach. And so I start reading through this job ad, and it's almost like they wrote this thing with me in mind, because every single thing that they were looking for, every class they wanted taught, everything they wanted this new person to do, research with students, all the stuff, it just was completely in my wheelhouse. So I was perfectly happy at Penn State where I was. I had good colleagues. I liked the students there. I had been there for 6 years. That coming fall, I was going up for tenure. I was pretty cautiously optimistic, as much as you can be, about tenure when you're going through that process. And I wasn't really looking to move, but I'm reading this job and I'm thinking, man, this is just got my name written on it. So I thought about it. Went home and my wife Lynn, I remember we chatted about it, and I said, look, I'm like, I just got to satisfy my own curiosity. If you're okay with it, I'm going to apply for this job. There's no way I'm going to get it, but if you don't mind, let's just go ahead and throw our name in the ring here. Next thing I knew, I had an interview. Next thing I knew, I had a new job. So, I wasn't really looking to come here. I'm glad that I did. I mean, it turns out that this position is much better than the position I was in terms of the classes I get to teach here. I would have never had that opportunity there. The teaching load's a bit heavier. So I came from a 3-3 load. So what that means for people that don't realize, that means you teach three classes in the fall, 3 classes in the spring. So I came from a 3-3 load to a 4-4 load. So the teaching load's a little bit higher, but much better resources, much better faculty. I've made some fabulous friends in the time that I've been here. So it's worked out really well. But it's always funny that, I didn't seek out coming here. And the ironic thing is I grew up probably 45 minutes from here. And that's something else that people just don't realize about faculty members is when you're a faculty member and you're searching for a tenure track job, you go where the job takes you. I mean, it is not common to just say, hey, I'm going to go live in this town and I'm going to get a job there, and it works that way. So right. I know when I was first out in the job market, coming out of grad school, I basically narrowed my search to anything east of the Mississippi. So I mean, that geographically, that's a pretty big area when you're talking about, all the way from Minnesota to Maine and from, all the way down to the Sun Belt. So you just go where the jobs take you. So for me to end up here, kind of 45 minutes from where I grew up is just, it's unusual to be sure, but glad it brought me here.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge blessing to work near your home. And I think you grew up in Shelby, right?
Yeah, I went to Shelby High School. So I'm a proud Whippet. Shelby Whippets from 1988 was the year I graduated. Actually, turns out that a good friend of Musin and myself, Chris Burkett, he and I were in the same graduating class in high school. He teaches in the political science department here at AU. So I went to Shelby High School. I actually grew up on a 200-acre farm outside of town between Shelby and Crestline, actually much closer to Crestline High School, which is then and still now a much smaller school than Shelby was or is. And it just so happens that my parents' farm, the edge of the farm was on the county line. So if that farm would have been 200 feet to the west, I'd be a Crestline High School graduate, but it turned out that I went to Shelby.
Did that make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, back then and still, I mean, Crestline High School today only probably graduates about 35 kids. So, we talk about small schools around here, and you talk about kids that might have gone to Black River or Mapleton or Northwestern, something like those are small schools. But Crestline is dramatically smaller than that. So my high school, when I went to Shelby, graduated in '88, I think we had about 225 kids, which is maybe just a touch smaller than what Ashland High School would put out right about now. I mean, like a lot of small towns, Shelby has it's seen some of its population leave. So I think now they might graduate close to 175, 180. But it was just a great place to grow up. I mean, I grew up out in the country, grew up obviously back in a time when no cell phones, no iPads, no iPods, and you basically played outside from morning till night. And I mean, with 200 acres of a farm to run around on, we certainly had our share of exercise outside. But I wouldn't trade my childhood for anything in terms of kind of where I grew up and how I grew up.
Speaking of exercise,
Yeah.
that makes me think of something. So for those of you who don't know, there's a group on the campus called Ep.5, and that is probably the most important part to Dr. Metzger's life at AU. So a little backstory there. One time I was in the basement in the weight room, and I just hear this grunting. And I'm like, what is that? And I turn around, and I see these three gentlemen lifting heavy weights. I think it was like 250 on bench, and I was like, oh my goodness, I hope I can get there one day. But I learned later that that's this F3 group. And essentially in that group, there's a significance with the names that you have. And so basically that shows something about your personality or plays a fun joke at something that you're interested in. So Dr. Metzger, what is your F3 name?
Yeah, so I've been in that group since May of 2019, I think it is. And I mean, that group has just grown in leaps and bounds since it started back then. I was actually part of the 5 guys that went down to Columbus. So F3 is this kind of nationwide thing. It's got an organizational structure to it, and one of the things that they do is they launch these new areas where these workouts get done. So there were 5 of us, myself included, that went down to Columbus and worked out with these guys down there one day in the summer of 2019. And part of the deal is if you're a newbie to F3, you show up, and at the end of that workout, they give you a name. So my name turned out, and it's funny because before I even went down there, I told my wife, I'm like, I know exactly what they're going to name me because it's easy and it's a cheap way to do it. And I get down there, they found out that I'm a psych professor. So within like a half a second, my name was Freud. So my F3 name is Freud. It's kind of a joke. It's one of those things where when we name people, and man, we've got some really bizarre names. We have some weird names. We got names where people are like, well, how in the hell did they come up with this one? In the end, your name should be kind of something a little bit humbling, I think, something that you might not particularly like. But the thing about it is, everybody just kind of embraces it. So, while if it were up to me, I would have probably chosen something different, but I've come to embrace it, and that's who I am.
That's awesome. That's a really good way to look at it. It's humbling. Some
It
people
could be a little bit, yeah.
you don't stick with it because of the name. Okay, I'm not doing this. Oh, that's awesome. So you're not just a typical academic professor. We're looking online. We heard that you and I think Lynn, your wife, do some remodeling as well, right?
Yeah.
What led you to that? And also, if you could maybe share with us one renovation project that was especially challenging.
Sure. Yeah. So that one comes from, well, it most certainly comes from my father-in-law. So my wife's father, Dave, who is, I'm trying to think how old he would be now. He's probably, I think he's in his 80s, 82 maybe, 81, 82. He's going to have a birthday here coming up in December. He's been a home remodeler his entire life. So I think the story I was told was his kind of first project was, I think he was, I don't know, 14 years old, and his family lived in the Bracknell area of Cleveland. And I don't know if his dad or somebody made a comment one day that they needed a garage. So the next thing he knew, he went out and he just built a garage, not having any idea of kind of what he was doing or how he was doing it. And he's unbelievably talented and skilled at that. And when I was in graduate school, he was living up in the Cleveland area. I was in graduate school at Kent State. As you can imagine, when you're in grad school, you're certainly not making a lot of money, so you got to make your pennies stretch, and I was certainly no different in that regard. So what I would do is I would, on weekends and holidays and breaks and whenever I had time, I would go work for him. And my wife had done, girlfriend at the time, my wife now, had done the same thing. When she was on breaks and stuff, she would go and work and help out because he always had some other kind of project going. There was always either a house that he was going to renovate and rent out, or a house he was going to renovate and flip. And so that's kind of how it started. So I started the way any kind of apprentice starts. So it's, hey, here's a bunch of wood and I need you to pull these nails out of this, or here's a pile of dirt and I need you to move it from one spot to another. It was basic, just straight up brute labor work, and there was nothing exciting, there was nothing fancy about it. But then what happens is that the more you do it and the more experience you get, then the kinds of things that that you have the opportunity to work on get more and more. So I'd say that a lot of those very basic skills that I learned in kind of the construction trades really came from him. And then as you know, things got more serious with my wife and I, and you know, she was a girlfriend, then she turned into a fiance, then my wife, and we lived in close to Pennsylvania for a little bit, and we thought, well, you know, maybe this is a chance to see if we can do some of this stuff on our own. And I'll be honest, the first house that we bought, actually the second house we bought, was in Sharon, Pennsylvania. It was a triplex, and I mean, in hindsight, that was one that I probably should have just rented a bulldozer and knocked the damn thing over, because I mean it was in rough shape, very rough. Had people living in it, and I probably bit off more than I could chew on that one, because here I am, I'm teaching at Penn State, Shenango. I kind of go there during the day. At this point, we don't have any kids yet, so it wasn't so much pulling me away from family time with family or kids and stuff, but I would go to work during the day, and then after work, I would go work at this house for, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours a night, get home late at night, do that during the week, go there on the weekends. And I think it was probably 13 months by the time that house was done. And a lot of stuff. And I listened to Dan's podcast with Dan McDonald the other day. And I think he and I kind of have the same message. So a lot of stuff you just kind of learn on your own, where,
Right.
you know, I've never installed a furnace before, but I'm going to figure out how to do it. And it was that house, I think, where I learned more things about kind of that process than any other project, because it was everything from basement floor to roof had to be redone in that house. It was kitchens, it was baths, it was carpets, it was framing, it was electrical, it was plumbing. I mean, you name it. And a lot of that stuff I had never done before. So some of it came from, you know, phone calls to my father-in-law, asking him advice on different things. Other things came from just tearing something apart and kind of seeing how things fit back together, and you just kind of learn that way. So, you know, I think we did 2 houses in Pennsylvania. We did one in Cleveland. Since we moved to Ashland, we've done, I think, 5. Probably besides that person in PA, probably one of the more challenging ones was one that we did actually during COVID. It sits off of Route 60. It's an old farmhouse on about 3 acres that we had sold after we fixed it up. But it was another one that if somebody would have brought in a bulldozer, they probably wouldn't have been too far off base in terms of what they should have done with that house. But it needed everything from top to bottom. It's a super old house. It's super cool. I mean, in terms of just some of the woodwork and the character of that house is really neat. But it was done during COVID, so I'm trying to get into Home Depot to buy stuff when they're only letting 20 people in at a time. I'm trying to get people to come out and do odd jobs for me when you know, people are, you know, afraid to leave their house. It was challenging for a lot of different reasons, but then you add COVID to it, and it just kind of made it even more challenging. But I mean, in the end, you know, every house that we do is one that, you know, you end up learning something new that you didn't know before. And for me, working on houses like that, it's almost therapeutic. I mean, obviously my day job is very different from that, but to me, it's where other people look at that as work. I look at it as something I enjoy doing. It, you know, swinging a hammer and building something, and man, what I love to do is take just old, rundown, dilapidated houses that most people would not even give a second look at, and by the time you're done, they're beautiful. And there's a lot of, you know, a lot of sense of accomplishment that comes from that.
Right. There's a lot of creativity as well, I think,
Yeah.
involved, trying to solve different problems. And that's something that I really appreciate about the US. And, you know, as someone who grew up somewhere else, back home, you know, for home repair projects, you just call the guy. You don't really do it. There's always someone you can call, electrician, plumber, what have you. but I also understand the cost of home repair here in the U.S. is expensive. I don't think it would be worth it, purchasing a fixer upper and having other people do it for you. Uh, but in the process, you learn a lot, right?
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing is a lot of it's out of it, just like Dan said, it's out of necessity. I mean, my wife stayed home for 10 years when we started having kids, and there's a lot of sacrifices that were made by having her do that, and you don't have the extra income to go out and to pay people to do stuff for you. So I mean, not only the fact that I enjoy doing those things, but the fact that out of necessity, sometimes you can't afford to pay somebody $10,000 to redo your bathroom, but if you do it yourself, you can do it for 1/10 that cost, and it looks just as nice, and you've accomplished something in the meantime. So some of it's out of enjoyment, some of it's done out of necessity, a variety of different reasons why I do it.
Very good. What do you enjoy about your teaching?
I tell you that the thing that I enjoy most about the teaching, well, first off, I enjoy the variety of the classes I teach. So I think I teach about 8 different courses
Oh,
here
wow.
at AU. And some of those are courses that kind of everybody teaches. So, we all kind of teach Psych 101, and we all teach the research method sequence, and we have a senior seminar course that we all teach. But then I've also got a listing of 4 other upper division courses, and really kind of those are courses that fall within my wheelhouse. So I'm the one that always teaches them. And it's physio psych and neuropsych, and then cognitive psych and learning theory. And so every semester is different for me. So the one thing that is common across all semesters is that almost every semester I'm teaching at least 1 and sometimes 2 sections of Psych 101. And at this point in my career, I've been doing this for 27 years now. You would think that teach an intro psych class when you've done it so many times I mean, if I would add up the number of times I've taught that class, it's literally been in the hundreds of times. And you would think that it would get stale and it would get boring, but it really hasn't. And I guess in some ways I'm kind of surprised by that, because I would think that it would, just after that much sheer repetition of teaching the same course. And obviously, things have changed over the years, and the way I teach it one semester is not exactly the same as the next, but there's a lot of themes that carry over from one semester to the next. So it hasn't gotten stale at all. And a lot of that has to do with the students. I mean, the students are great. I have the benefit in the psych department, especially with Psych 101. I've got 2 sections right now this semester, and in those 2 sections, I think there's 50 or 51 students. And I think there's only about 1 or 2 psych majors across those 2 sections. So most of them are, exercise science, business, nursing, education, whatever it might be. So they're not students that are taking it for their major. They're taking it for core, or for it's a program requirement for whatever their major is. But the benefit is it doesn't matter what you're talking about in that class. Every student can relate to almost everything, right? So it's an easy class to teach, in the sense that students are very interested in it, because whatever concept we're talking about, if that thing doesn't directly relate to them, it relates to their brother or their mom or their next door neighbor or their great aunt or something like that. So the students always keep it fresh, because they're always asking questions. They're always interacting with me. So I guess that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is just, I always compliment my lower division Psych 101 stuff every semester with some upper division courses that are pretty much all majors. And that's one thing that when I came here to interview, I was most impressed by, was just kind of how, I don't know how the word kind, but how kind the students were. So I came to interview, and I've got students that I've never met before. I'm just walking past them on the sidewalk, and they're making eye contact and greeting me. They're holding doors open for me. They when I met with students for my interview, and I'd have lunch or dinner with them, they were just fabulous, and that hasn't changed at all. So I've been doing this for a long time. I'm kind of the the old codge of the department. I'm the old grumpy guy, I guess, in some ways, but in a lot of ways, the students are, I mean, they keep me young in the sense that I love this environment, and I love this teaching at a college campus where students are coming and they are genuinely interested in learning something is refreshing, to say the least.
Wonderful.
In terms of psychology as a science, it's arguably relatively new. So how does that play into keeping it fresh? Like, how do you have to adapt your courses to fit the new developments in psychology?
No, that's a great question. And you're right. I mean, you look at science, psychology in the context of science, it's got its roots that go back to the late 1870s. So, while most people would say, well, 1879, I mean, that's, my gosh, that's more than 140 years. That's an old, but I mean, you look at how long chemistry's been around and physics and those kinds of things, it's a baby. And so there's lots of stuff that's continually being learned. And I think that the way that you bring those things into your classwork is to just stay up on the research, right? So whether that's doing research of your own or you're supervising research that students are doing, you need to keep up on new developments in the fields so that you can talk about those kinds of things in the classroom. So, it's one of the, I'm teaching a senior seminar class right now, and that class it's becoming one of my favorite classes because students come in there, and if I would tell students at the beginning of the semester what they're going to end up doing by the time the semester is over, they'd probably be terrified and drop the class on day one. We're just going to get into it slowly and we work our way through it. And what we spend the entire semester doing is looking at nothing but peer-reviewed journal articles. And it's not me that comes in and teaches the students about this. So I've got 11 students in there right now, and each of them is responsible for 4 times a semester to lead the class on a discussion of an article that they have chosen. So this semester's topic is cognitive enhancement. So ways in which you can enhance or make better the cognitive system. So that might be attention, memory, problems, whatever it relates to. And so they go out, they find an article, they have to run it past me first and I approve it or not. And then they lead the class in a discussion of that article that day. And each student, each time they lead a discussion, it lasts for about 35 minutes. And so this is not like a 5-minute, song and dance about what happened. This is, for you to be able to do 35 minutes, you got to be prepared as hell for whatever it is you're talking about. And I was looking through this today. So this is a binder that's got these are the articles that we've done so far, right? This is just so far in the semester. So if I would have built that in the class on day one and said, hey, guess what? We're going to read all of these peer-reviewed journal articles and you're going to understand them, it would have terrified them. But you do it bits and pieces, and we do a little bit every day. So 2 people go each day. And so I keep up on the research in that regard too. So it's not only you're doing your own research, you're keeping up with and doing research and reading things that are going on right now, because like you say, it's a science, and science is continually evolving. It's constantly changing. New things are being discovered, and we can't be talking about things that were discovered back in the 1970s. I mean, sometimes we can because those things are still relevant, but there's lots of other stuff that's relevant too.
Since Zach asked a smart question, what's an unexpected fact or a fun fact that you discovered in your research in cognitive psychology or behavioral neuroscience that most people might not know?
Oh boy. I mean, one of the things I like to talk about in classes, because I find it terribly interesting, is the way that brain damage causes different kinds of really significant and sometimes strange and unusual sorts of symptoms. And probably one of my favorite writers in that regard passed away last year. His name was Oliver Sacks. And if you ever saw the movie Awakenings, he was the one that movie was based on the book that he had written. He wasn't a psychologist, he was actually a neurologist. And his most famous book is a collection of short stories called The Man That Mistook His Wife for a Hat. And it's a very appropriate title for that book because it literally is about a guy who, because of a brain tumor he had, developed something that's called visual agnosia, which is basically where this individual and people like him have the inability to recognize objects by looking at them. So like if you would hold up a pen that you and I instantly know, a 2-year-old instantly knows what this thing is. That person would know that it's black, that it's linearly shaped, but they wouldn't know what it is in terms of being able to name it by name or to call it by name. And if you give the person a chance to hold it and touch it and use other kinds of sensory abilities, they can determine and figure it out, but they can't do it by sight. And so that's kind of a strange symptom that you see. There's things called aphasias where people have language disorders and language deficits, also typically because of strokes and tumors and those kinds of things. So a lot of this stuff you unfortunately see in older people because they're more prone to those kinds of neurological problems. But you for example, you get a person who there's a very specific disorder called alexia without agraphia, and that would be where you give a person with that disorder a piece of paper and ask them to write you a letter, and they can compose a perfect letter, right? One that you, Musin, in the writing center would give them an A on, right? So it's got a clear beginning, a clear middle, a clear end. There's not a spelling mistake in it. There's no grammatical errors. It is flawless and perfect, and that person just wrote that out. And you take it from them, and you give it back to them 5 minutes later, and they can't read a word that's written on the paper, and they're the one that just wrote it, right? So they have the ability to write but not read, and so you get, and that's just kind of this strange thing about the way your brain is wired, is that when I always tell my students that when you talk about physiology and the way your brain works, you take a lot of stuff for granted, right? So you wake up in the morning and you take for granted the fact that you open your eyes and you see and you know what things are. You take for granted the fact that you can walk. You take for granted the fact that you can speak and people talk to you and you understand them.
Right.
And you only start to look at those things and realize that there's something more there when it doesn't work the way that it's supposed to. And there's all kinds of people that have just these really strange and unusual symptoms from brain damage that sometimes are almost unbelievable.
Right. Fascinating. Zach, do you have any questions for Dr. Metzger regarding the classes you've taken with him?
Regarding the classes I've taken, I'm not sure. I do have a question about the growth of Ashland athletics, though, being
Okay.
the NCAA director, I believe, right, or something along those lines.
Well, faculty athletic rep, yeah.
Faculty athletic director, representative, yeah. How has Ashland grown throughout the years in athletics? So, like, our women have won like 3 national championships in the past 10 years. Football is doing pretty well. Basketball is doing pretty well. Both soccer teams are doing great in terms of the conference.
Mhm.
How has that occurred, really?
Yeah, and actually that's the whole athletic piece to this university is actually one of the things that I was most excited about, because the university, when I was at Penn State Shenango, it was a small campus. It was primarily not primarily, it was exclusively a commuter campus. There were no residential students there, and there were no athletic teams. So, I mean, they had a few, intramurals and that kind of stuff, but there were no formal varsity sports there. So when I came here, and I'm like, man, this is really cool. I can go and I can take my kids and my wife, and we can go to basketball games and football games and all these different things. And so I've always been had a great affinity for the athletic side of things here. And it's only been the last, I'm trying to think, I think this is either my 3rd or my 4th year as a faculty athletic rep. So just for people that don't know what that is, every university that's in the NCAA has to have one of these people that's appointed by the president of the university. And it's that person's job is to kind of serve as the bridge or the liaison between the academic side of the house and the athletic side of the house. So that's kind of where I reside, is in between those two things. Almost got like I've got one foot in each side of the university as far as that goes. I mean, we've got 24 athletic teams here. when I came in 2003, I'm not sure how many we would have had. I'm going to guess we had maybe somewhere in the high teens to maybe 20, something like that. We've added a few over the most recent years. So women's lacrosse is a new one. The tennis teams that used to be here, then they went away, then they came back. But you're right. I mean, the teams are doing fabulous this year. Last year they won the GMAC. It was the first time that they had won the league title in I don't know how many years it's been. For years we were in the GLIAC, and you just had powerhouse schools like Ferris State that, I mean, it's just, to me, it's just silly. Ferris State should really be a D1 school. Ferris State's bigger than Bowling Green. So, you think about the fact that we go up there and we play teams like Ferris State, and we play Grand Valley State, and we play Wayne State. That's like us playing Bowling Green in Toledo. And whenever we would play those teams, we would always hold our own and do very, very well. But when you've got teams like that, you're not going to win a conference championship against teams like that. They're just too strong, and they've got too many resources.
Right.
But this last year we did great. I mean, we won the GMAC. Fall sports are doing very, very well. And if you would ask me why the sports teams do so well, I think it's the same answer as why a lot of our academic departments do so well. It's the people, right? So it's the coaches. I mean, the coaches here are fabulous. Head coaches, assistant coaches, everybody's kind of, everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction, right? And you're rowing the boat in the direction of what is best for your student athletes, right? And everybody knows, every coach knows that these are student athletes, right? They're here to get an education, and that is first and foremost. And it's, the athletics is part of that, and that's part of that kid's identity is whatever sport that they play. But they're here for an education first. And what's cool about AU is that we all realize that, and we all know that. But unlike some other schools, we also win a hell of a lot, right? So our teams are very, very strong across the board. And so you get that nice complement of, we've got coaches that understand that academics is really important. They understand that their players need to take their academics seriously. Our coaches love it when their students achieve in the classroom, but at the same time, man, they're really good athletes. They're really good athletes too. And so to me, that's been kind of it's kind of been easy being the faculty athletic rep, because, we've got everybody just kind of on the same page as far as that goes. And I mean, over in Kate's, the whole athletic department over there is just great. You go from the top with the athletic director, Al King, to the assistant ADs and everybody else. We have a culture of winning, but we also have a culture of what we know is important for those students.
Very good. Yeah. So going back to that accent on the individual, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And, that, I don't know how long we've had that motto. I mean, I know that they were using it when I came in 2003, and it's, I mean, it's just kind of a model that doesn't go stale, right? It transcends time. You are here. We are all here. You're here, Musin. I'm here. The head basketball coach is here, right, for the same reasons, for the students that choose to come here to AU. So, no, that accent in the individual, it's a model that we have, but I think it's one that most people take to heart.
Absolutely. It is a foundational principle. I think we do have those, yearly, I don't know what you would call them, mottos maybe, but they come and go, but the accent of the individual stays.
Absolutely.
Runs deep into the identity of the university.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have you faced any tensions maybe between, the expectations from student athletes as athletes versus their, work as students?
No, in a short answer, yes. Right. So, when I look at the kind of commitment that a varsity athlete student has here, I don't think people realize how big that commitment is. So I also know it from a personal standpoint because my youngest child, John, is I shouldn't probably announce this on the AU podcast, but he plays football up at Hillsdale. So I see the amount of time that he puts into practice and lifting and just all the things that they have to do in football season. And I know that it's no different from our students down here. And it's funny because one of the things as faculty athletic rep that I did this year was to bring back an old program that happened probably 10 or 12 years ago. And I was able to take part in, and it was Musin, you know all about this. It's a faculty staff honorary coach.
Yeah.
And so, you were the honorary coach with Dr. Burke at what, week 2?
I'm not sure what week, but it was the Hillsdale game.
It was Hillsdale. That's right. It was Hillsdale game. So, what happens is I set up 2 faculty members to basically spend game day with the team, and they have a meal with the team. They go to chapel with the team. They're at pregame on the sidelines with the team, and they're on the sidelines for the game. And the one thing that I got from a faculty member a couple weeks ago that did that was they said, I now have a newfound appreciation for how much work these student athletes do day in and day out because of that. And so, they certainly have a commitment on the athletic side, but you've got an equally big commitment on the academic side, right? And in a lot of ways, well, not in a lot of ways, in every way, the academic side is the more important of the two. And so they have to find a way in which they can kind of balance those things. And it's tough, I'm sure, for a lot of these kids where they're, when you're getting up early for practice, then you got a full slate of classes all day, and you're trying to squeeze meals in, and then you might have to jump on a bus and leave for a competition that's down in Kentucky, and you're getting back late, and it's a lot for some of them. So, I also, I think maybe more so than anybody, have an admiration for the amount of work that they put in with things. What must happen is, if a student has to be away for a competition, we need to find a way, and faculty are very good about this. They need to find a way to allow that student to make up that activity, make up that exam, whatever it might be. But there's a flip side of that too, where a student is never permitted to skip class for a practice. So we've kind of got this balance for those things. So look, if you're taking a class and it just happens to fall in the middle of practice time, then you got to work out something with your coach where you're going to be practicing at a different time than everybody else, because you got to go to class and you have no choice in that matter.
Right.
Competitions are a little bit different, but I mean, you're constantly just kind of monitoring those things. Sometimes the issues will come up and I have to get involved and try and most times when I'm getting involved, all it is a matter of me communicating with people, trying to figure out what the best solution is. But since I've been doing this, the coaches have been great, the faculty have been great. I mean, and in the end, it all comes back to what we talked about before. You're doing what's best for the student.
Yeah, I was gonna say the honorary coach initiative is fantastic, and I myself have renewed appreciation for athletic teams and students, and I see my students that I have in class and whom I also met. I had lunch with them and the coach, and just like that relationship kind of changes to the better.
Yeah.
And there's that personal touch, I think. But going back to the individual and how we can actually support each single student, they're not, a student athlete, but they are a student when they are in the classroom, and tending to those needs. I think that's what would make the difference, ultimately. How can we support each single student, and what is it that they need? And I have a football student, and he's struggling with his essays, and I always, after class, I ask him, what is it that you need from me today that can help you, get closer to turning in that late essay?
Well, and to be honest, I don't disagree with that at all, but the motivation and the initiative has to come from that student, right? So you can lay out all kinds of opportunities for them, and you can lay out, hey, I'll help you do X, Y, and Z, but it's up to that student to say, you know what, I'm going to make that appointment to go and see you. and I'm
Yeah.
going to make that appointment to come to your office so that you can help me with X, Y, and Z. And I think sometimes that's where some things get lost, is that I don't know a single faculty member on this campus that would turn down somebody coming to their office hours. That's just not what happens. I always joke to my students, office hours are the loneliest part of my day because nobody ever shows up, right? I mean, you sit there and you know, your door's wide open for students to come by and nobody ever does. And so some of it has to fall back on that student to realize, hey, these people are there to help me, but I need to make the initiative to go look for that help.
And
And
also
maybe for some of them, they just don't, maybe some of them don't realize that. Maybe some of them are too proud and they think they can do it on their own. But there's no shame in getting help from people.
right, a lot of them don't even realize that office hours are for students. They think that's when the professor is working on something.
Yeah.
In an office. But did you hear that, Zach? Make sure you go visit Dr.
Oh,
Metzger.
trust me, that's the number one thing that I tell my clients at the WCC is go to office hours. It's the best way to make connections and learn the material in a one-on-one setting versus the classroom. So trust me, I go to office hours.
Zach gets it.
Okay. Awesome. So I'm not sure if you're involved in any of the educational trips. I don't know if that's
Germany.
yeah, like study abroad program. Yeah. So given a chance to take your studies on the road, where in the world would you love to travel?
Well, I tell you what, Musin, I have experience with that. John Mosier and I are taking students this coming spring to Germany. It'll be my fifth time going back in the AU in Germany program. So I went in that program in 2007. I directed it in 10, 11, and 12. Once 2012 rolled around, my kids were, well, my oldest would have been 12. My youngest would have been about 7.5, 8. And it just got to be too much to be away for 3 weeks every spring. So I stepped away from it. And then maybe about a year ago, I think Dr. Mosier was talking to Rebecca and he said, listen, I'll go to Germany if I can take Mitch with me. So I agreed. And we've got, I think I just heard this morning, we've got like 23 students signed up. So it is like one of the biggest AU in Germany trips they've ever had, where it's going to be fabulous. So he's in that program. We spend our time in Eastern Germany. We'll spend about 4 or 5 days in Berlin. We'll spend a couple days down in Dresden. Half of the content will be taught in the spring semester. The other half will be taught on the ground in Germany. We'll be there for, I think, about 16 days. And it's going to be fabulous. So he's doing a class on World War II. I'm doing a class on kind of the psychological aspects of the Holocaust. So they're two classes that mesh together very well. And I'm excited as can be about it. So looking forward to it. So yeah, if I could go anywhere in the world, that's where I would go. That's where I am going. But I can envision some other places that I'd like to take a trip to overseas, but that's the immediate one right now.
It's a funny thing, Mitch. When I was trying to do my research on you, there seems to be another Mitch Metzger who runs a travel agency out of Bangkok, Thailand.
Well, I can assure you that's not me.
Okay.
Unless somebody's stolen my identity, maybe it is. I don't know.
No, it was not you. It was a completely different person. But
I suspect Metzger is a German name, probably about like Smith. We're all over the place. So
interesting. Zach, I know that you have to run shortly, right? You have class.
I do, yes.
Do you have any questions for Dr. Metzger before you leave?
he said he had some curveballs for me, so I'm not sure if I already got them or not.
I guess so. I guess I gave you my biggest one, the F3.
One.
I don't know. To any non-psych students, if you could have them take a class that either requires prereqs or they can't take unless they're major or minor, which one do you think they should take? Or would you recommend to them?
Not Psych 101. You're saying the class you
Right.
have. Yeah. So To me, well, that senior seminar class I told you about is a great one, but the other one, kind of what I would consider the crown jewel of our department as far as classes go, is our advanced research course.
Okay.
So that's a class where the student is going to spend the entire semester working under the supervision of a faculty member, and they are going to do a research project from start to finish. They're going to come up with the idea. They're going to get the human subject review board approval. They're going to spend the semester collecting data. They're going to run some analyses. They're going to end up writing a big paper of the findings. They're going to present those findings to the class. And for probably half to 2/3 of those students, they're going to end up, even though it's not a class requirement, they'll end up presenting that research at the conference we take students to every April out in Chicago. So to me, that's the one class where you take that class and you're learning things we just can't teach you sitting in a classroom. So you're problem solving, you're thinking outside the box, you're having to kind of, do things on the fly. It is a fabulous class.
I'm taking that in the spring, so we'll
Good.
see how that goes.
So you're taking the intro to research methods right now?
I took that last semester.
Yeah, okay, good. So yeah, if you're taking the spring, so you'll be working with Chartier,
Yeah.
teaching that class in the spring, and you'll have a great experience with it.
Wonderful. Did he also present to IRCA?
We have them present to IRCA too, and the nice thing about that is usually IRCA is the week right before the Chicago conference. So it's almost like, it's a trial run for your presentation. So a lot of our students will end up doing posters at IRCA. Sometimes they'll do talks. But when they go to Chicago, they end up doing a poster presentation because that's the only format they can do it in. And so a lot of them will use that as just kind of a warm-up exercise before they get out to kind of the big leagues in Chicago.
Very nice, very nice. Oh, okay. So for this class, the research class, you don't have to be a psych major to take the course, right?
You do.
No, you don't have to be, but I would say the majority of them are. I mean, unless you're a major, you're probably not taking the introductory research methods course. I mean, sometimes we'll get some minors that take that. So a lot of times they're majors. If not, they're double majors, and if not, they're probably a minor. Although, I mean, as long as you take the introductory research course, there's no reason a non-major or non-minor couldn't take that class.
Right, right. Let's say I'm a deciding student, so I don't have a declared major yet.
Mhm.
What do I need to know to see if I would like to choose psychology as a major?
Well, I mean, I'd say that the best gauge whether you're going to like it as a major is you take the Psych 101 class. I mean, when I went to school, I was undecided the first, I think, 3 semesters. I kind of bounced around different ideas, not kind of half-heartedly majoring in other things, not having the slightest clue what I wanted to do. I took Psych 101, and man, my prof, I still remember, his name was Don Ragusa, just got his hooks into me, and that class brought me in, and it was like the first time I was really excited about something, college class wise. And so I think that's the best marker for that, is to take that. I mean, I always tell students, if you're not exactly sure what you want to do when you graduate college, and in some ways to expect an 18-year-old freshman already knows exactly what their life trajectory is, it's not fair. I mean, most 18-year-old kids don't know that. So if you don't know what the end result for you is going to be, man, psych is a great place to be, because we get students that come in and they literally scatter in 100 different directions. It is a great liberal arts degree where you are taught so many skills that are applicable to so many different occupations and jobs. Let's tell prospective students, if you come in and you're a psych major, there's some things I can promise you. And one thing I'm going to promise you is that we're going to make you work, right? So you're going to work hard. We're going to set the bar high, but at the same time, we're going to give you the skills and the tools to get to it. But you're going to leave a better writer, a better communicator, a better problem solver, a better researcher, a better thinker. That's the stuff that employers want. And so I don't care if you want to go to graduate school and you want to be a counselor, or if you want to go work in human resources, or you want to be a case manager, or you want to be a management position someplace. Psych is a great place to be. So, you start with the Psych 101 class, and if you enjoy it, stick with it and keep taking them. And there's a good chance if you enjoy the first one, you're going to enjoy all the rest of them that come down the road too.
Awesome. Any final advice for our students, Mitch?
No, I mean, I guess I would just say, it's just apply yourself. I mean, don't give half-hearted effort in things. I mean, jump into things both feet. And if you want to go off in this direction, do it with all your gusto. Don't give a half-hearted effort on things. Be open, right? Be flexible. Don't think that you got life figured out if you're 18 to 22, because guess what? You don't. I mean, I'm 52, soon to be 53. I'm not sure I got life figured out. I mean, I know I don't have life figured out now, right? So you never know what's around the corner next. And just keep your mind open, keep your options open. Don't be afraid to take risks. And that'd be some of the best advice I could give a student.
Yeah, you don't look a day older than 32, Mitch.
You must need a new prescription in those lenses.
Well, thank you so much. We could talk to you all day long, and you're a wonderful person and fun person to have around. And we don't want to be too selfish. You've been very generous with your time and wisdom, so thank you so much for that. And we're really grateful that you're here.
Well, I appreciate you giving me the time. I appreciate you having me on. You're one of my favorite people on campus, so I would always give at least an hour of my day to chat with you anytime.
Thank you. All right.
Zach, nice to see you.
Yes, you as well.
See you maybe in a class this coming spring, perhaps. If not, certainly by the fall next year.
For sure. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.